Electric Friends, a Gary Newman podcast, celebrating the tracks by a musical pioneer.
Hello, I'm Tom, and welcome back to the Electric Friends podcast. And this time, I have another interview special for you. And it's with one of the biggest names when it comes to the long list of people who have worked with Gary Newman during his career, Rrussell Bell. So Rrussell Bell, in case you didn't know, is a prolific musician, composer, and comedy writer. After graduating in physics at London University, he joined Tubeway Army back in 1979, first appearing on record in 1980's We Are Glass. He would then spend the next 10 years recording with Gary and touring the world with his band. He would also form the band Dramatis alongside Chris Payne, Sharpley and Denis Haines. Also a seasoned session player, he is also an award-winning jingles writer. He worked as a musical director for BSB and has worked on many film and TV projects. This includes acting, stand-up comedy and script writing for people such as Craig Charles and Keith Allen. He even appeared in the Vindaloo music video from Fat Les. He released his first EP, Like a Human, in 2019. He's an all-round talented and lovely man, and he very kindly agreed to appear on the podcast. So without further ado, here's the interview, and I'll speak to you at the end. Well, so firstly, Rrussell Bell, thanks for being on Electric Friends.
My pleasure.
So obviously, it'd be great to start right at the beginning and your early days before meeting Gary, and just from reading past interviews, it sounded like you were amongst entertainers from quite a young age.
Yeah, absolutely. No, my grandparents were trapeze artists with Barnum and Bailey's. And my grandfather actually had a metal plate in his head because he went through the net once.
Wow.
That was a bit traumatic. And my dad was, he was an acrobatic comedian. He used to do stand-up and tap dance on his hands with metal gloves, which was different. I just assumed everyone's dad did that. And he could juggle. And my mum was a tiller girl. And so I was always hanging around when they were doing pantomimes and different shows. So I grew up in that theatrical environment.
And it sounded like you also had a bit of sporting experience growing up as well.
So he was very, he used to be a PE instructor in the army. But my sporting experience, that was, well, I just didn't stop at school. I was captain of rugby, basketball, athletics, got a 3 A's 5-star badge and qualified for the All England. I was doing a lot of running and swimming and jumping.
And so when was it then that you first discovered a love for music? Because that was quite from a young age as well, from what I can tell. Did you have any particular early influences as well?
I started off dancing to music, but I didn't consider it as a profession at that time because I was 3. But moving on, at school, in the primary school, headmaster at assembly said, would anyone like to learn violin? So we were looking at each other and he said, a violin will be provided. So violin. I was right in there. Yeah. And I just kept it up. I kind of likes it. The hardest instrument in the world to play, especially starting as, but you have to start as a kid, I suppose. But then at 11, I wanted a bit more. I discovered Jimi Hendrix and Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin, and I wanted to be a guitarist. So at 11, I got my first guitar and just carried on from there, really.
And so were you in many bands before joining up with Tubeway Army?
I was in a school band, hippie band at school called Petal.
Wow.
It would be. I was in a punk band called Local Operator. But mainly when I was at college, I was doing session work.
Yeah.
Things like they had these albums called Sounds Like. So basically, it's an album of recent covers.
Yeah.
And I used to do sessions on those and just sit there with a bunch of session players. The very first track I had to do was Hocus Pocus by Fusion.
Bloody hell.
Fortunately, I'd learned it because I really liked it. But Jan Ackerman, at that time, he was hard to keep up with. But I got away with it. Yeah, that was fun.
It's quite the debut. But so when were you already a fan of, or obviously aware of Gary's music before auditioning for him? What was the whole process for you doing? Yeah,
I saw him doing Our Friends Electric on the Old Grey Whistle test, and I immediately loved the band. I thought, I really like that band. Then I heard a rumor that he was looking for a guitarist, so I phoned up Beggars Banquet, and I said, "Is it true that he's looking for a guitarist? Because I'd like to apply for the job." And they said, "Well, we don't know anything about that." So I thought, okay, it's just a rumor. And then I used to get Melody Maker every week, and I looked in the small ads at the back, and there was an ad saying guitarist wanted into Gary Newman, into Tubeway Army / Ultravox. And I thought, it's got to be them. So I applied for that audition, turned up, and it was them. Nice. And so I auditioned and got the job. I took a guitar synth along, which I'd been using in another band, and I think that didn't do any harm. It's a massive, great thing with 4 outputs, strings and bass and synth sounds, and that didn't do any harm. You just on the first tour.
So what did you have to do in the audition itself? Was it like a particular?
Played Our Friends Electric and Cards, basically.
Wow, yeah, nice.
And then when they discovered I could play violin as well, because Chris was playing viola on tracks, that was a bonus.
Yeah. So what were your first gigs with the band, and who else was there at that time?
The very first thing I ever did with them was a TV show in Holland called, was it Top Hop? I don't know, I can't remember. But that was my first experience with them. And we did Our Friends Electric because Europe was a bit behind as Tubeway Army. And it was a weird gig. We did the TV show, and then the record company took us out to a restaurant afterwards. And they had 3 different cars, and we all came back in different cars. And I came back in the old Volvo P1800S. He had the estate version of it, and we were bombing down the road, and he drove straight into a parked car. And he said, "Get out and run," because if you have an accident, especially in drinking, it's a mandatory week in jail. And so we jumped out the car, still slightly dazed. And for some reason at the restaurant, I decided to steal a plastic lobster that they had on the seafood display. I was running down the road with a plastic lobster, and turned up. That was my first gig. Turned up back at the hotel out of breath with a plastic lobster, and we started collecting them after that. We had quite the collection from around the world.
Yeah, so that's quite the first induction into live performance with them.
This is what it's like.
Yeah. So as someone who wasn't unfortunately around in like 79, and I've obviously seen all the videos of the touring principal, and always very envious of other fans I speak to. But what was that whole experience like? Because it just looked like an incredible set. And
brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I loved every minute of it. It was a really good bunch of people to work with. Probably literally the best team I've ever worked with. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it.
Were there any like particular, say, highlights from that tour that you remember, like any venues or moments?
The very first one, Glasgow, Holland. I mean, because we didn't know what to expect. And it was packed solid, 10-foot high stage, and the floor was shaking with everybody cheering and stamping. And there were people trying to get up onto the stage, standing on each other's shoulders, and the dry ice is rolling off the front of the stage and suffocating them. And then when we came out, the bus was parked about 20 feet away, and we were getting our clothes ripped off, which I thought was very, very odd. It's like we only just made it there alive. Yeah. Fans running down the street and banging on the bus. And I thought, this is brilliant. Yes, this is what it should be like.
I couldn't recognize my
Well, I was going to say, like, yeah, Gary's fame and success in 79/80, you know, it was so immense and quick. Like, what was that period like for you and the band? Obviously, he had the brunt of all the focus, but what was it like for you as well?
Well, it was great. We were non-stop. If we weren't recording, we were touring. And so we always had stuff to do. Gary obviously had to do loads of interviews on tour. We had the easy bit, really. We just pitched up for sound check and then did the gig. We did a lot of rehearsal. We rehearsed probably twice as long as most bands do. And it was really worthwhile because once you know it that well, that nothing can go wrong. It was a really good system. And
then also, obviously, particular things like going to America and doing Saturday Night Live. I mean, that must have been an amazing experience.
That was a hell of an experience because it's absolutely, literally, totally live. So everything you hear is being played live. And you know that when you've got a load of cameras, and when the one in front of you, when the red light comes on, you've got 45 million people looking at you. You just know that a couple of them are going, he looks stupid. So you think, oh my God. So I was very nervous. My teeth were itchy. But it was a really good experience. I absolutely loved it.
Ladies and gentlemen, all the way from England, Gary Newman.
Safest of all, I can lock all my doors, and this is the only way to live in cars.
And so was I think I'm right in saying that Telecom was the first album you were involved with in terms of the making.
All the way through, yes.
And so how did that process with Gary and the band work back then? Was it what was like the recording and writing process like, and how much input did you guys get to have?
Well, it varied on track to track. Generally, Gary would come in and put down like a Moog bass line, which would tell us what the chord changes were going to be. And he'd get the structure down like that. And then we'd get the drums down first. And then slowly work different bits in. And each song was slightly different. There's a couple of songs where, he said, play a guitar solo all the way through. And I'll pick out some little bits of melody that we can use for the vocals. And other times he came in with a pretty much totally finished song. Another time he'd say, oh, can you do a funky sort of Niles type rhythm bit on this? And so it was guided, but we had enough influence to make it satisfying.
And it must have been, that whole period is obviously quite shocking when he announced that he was retiring.
Yeah, that was a bit of a surprise. Yeah.
Yeah, and I bet that must come from nowhere at the time.
Well, it was a bittersweet thing at the gig because the Wembley gigs obviously were incredible. That's a hell of an experience. But it was with a bit of sadness, thinking, oh, this is it. And at the end of it, we sort of looked at each other, what are we going to do now?
Yeah.
That's how Dramatis came about, really.
Yeah.
We all get on well, we work well together, so why don't we stay together and do our own album?
And how quick was that decision for you guys then when you decided to go, let's try it?
That week.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a bit of a cool off and it was like, right, let's get together and see what we can do.
And did Paul ever think about joining? Was for him?
Well, we asked him if he wanted to join, but he was doing his own recordings at the moment, at that time.
Yeah.
And and he didn't want to be part of it really, because as I say, he had his own projects going.
Yeah. And then I re-listened to the album a couple of weeks ago, and I love the difference in the tracks, but also I like the quirkiness of the fact that the band shared lead vocals on the albums. How did that decision come about? Yeah,
it wasn't a decision really. Just organically. Yeah. Basically, it's like, for example, like Chris sang on turn because he'd written most of it. And so we always recorded the backing tracks first and then thought about the vocals at the very end. And quite often, in fact, usually we recorded them in too high a key for me to sing. And but with Chris, we said, what does it go like? So he sang them his version of the song. We said, well, you record it then. No, there's no point me learning it. You know it already, so you're going to do it. And so it was basically mainly Denis and I doing the lead vocals. But it was just like whoever had the most input on the song did the vocals. And then Gary came along, and he came along to Ridge Farm Studios where we were recording. I was just about to do the vocals on Love Needs No Disguise. And he said, oh, I really like that. Can I sing that one? I went, yeah, sure. Saved me a lot of effort. And of course, it came out really well. Did a lot better than I could.
I mean, it's one of my personal favourite songs that Gary's ever sung on. It's such a great song. What was I just wondered what like the meaning of the song in terms of inspiration and the
I wrote the lyrics. Right, I wrote most of the lyrics on the album, but it was about our time touring with Gary. Actually, we toured the skies, and when the friends all go home, Love Needs No Disguise. It was literally about that. Which is kind of ironic because he ended up singing a song that was written as a tribute to him.
Yeah. And how did you feel about the album as a whole? Was there ever plans to do another one, a second one?
No, absolutely. Definitely. But like Chris moved to France and we didn't, because, well, as we were doing it, let's get this straight, we were doing a TV show with David Essex in, I think, Newcastle, or Manchester, probably Newcastle. And there was, after the show, there was a phone rang backstage and the stage manager got it and called me to the phone, and it was Beryl phoning up. And she said, Gary wants to go back touring again. Would you be interested in joining? And so I said, well, I have to get back to you. We'll talk about it and I'll get back. But we said, it's nice touring big stadiums and America and Japan and Australia, isn't it? And we were like, yeah. So we decided, well, we'll never know if it was the right decision, but it was a good decision at the time. So we rejoined, as it were, put the Dramatis thing on hold. And we did one tour, and we were going to get back together again. As you know, sadly, Sid died just the week that we got together, the three of us, to start the whole thing again. And then I'd written a few songs for the next album, and I'd done some work with Chris in France. But he was busy with other projects, and so was I, because I had a jingle company, and I was doing comedy writing and ghostwriting comedy books and doing scripts for BBC, ITV, and Channel 4. So we were both really busy. The songs were all written for the second album, and most of the backing tracks are recorded. Just got some vocals to finish off, and it's just getting time to actually sit down and mix them and produce them. Because my engineer producer lives in Leicester, which is not quite convenient, and we work on Zoom, but it's never the same because he's got different plugins to me and vice versa. And I spend half the year in Barbados now, and I've got a studio here in Cornwall, and I've copied it in Barbados, but it's still not the same as being in the room with somebody.
So is Chris involved in this new works, or is it mainly yourself?
It's not at the moment, because he's literally so busy.
Yeah.
But hopefully he will be. I want to get him. And when I did, we had a Dramatis tour booked, but he double booked and couldn't do it. So I ended up doing it on my own, just a couple of gigs, I think a couple of years ago, and then did 3 last year. Yeah, that was 3 last year. But no, I'd love to get back together again. We really like working with each other.
Yeah.
It's ever so well. It's just a question of logistics and time.
Yeah, well, when I spoke to Chris, he mentioned how you met up with Cedric and how it just felt really natural and great as a three.
Yes.
Yeah. And it must have been such a shock to lose him.
It was a blow to it. We've been still not over it.
Yeah. Well, what I like about Dramatis is the fact that you never technically broke up, but you joined back obviously with
it's just been a slight hiatus between the first and second albums. It might be a world record actually.
Yeah. And then obviously you remain part of Gary's live band for the rest of the decade and played on his albums. I think was it Outland was the last one.
The last one I played on, I think. Yes.
So what was that whole period like for you? Because I know it's obviously a tough time for Gary in terms of chart success and his recognition, but I still think he was really making great music throughout that whole time, even if he might not rate it himself very highly. But what was that whole period like for you?
Well, it was, I always look forward to working with him and go in every now and then and do some recording with him. But it was a bit sad then. But with him, I was so busy with other projects, especially comedy writing and writing. Doing my jingle company, which was busy just doing advertising music. So we sort of drifted out of live gigs and did that, basically.
Yeah. And obviously it was also in 2012, which was great, was when I think that was the first time you reunited on stage with Gary alongside Chris.
Yes.
And that was, I love seeing the video again of you doing Love Needs No Disguise with Gary. That was awesome. That
was fun.
Yeah.
We did a couple of other little guest spots here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Every time I see Gary, it's like, I saw him the day before. Just pick up exactly where we left off. Start immediately. There's no awkwardness at all. No. It's literally like, back again.
What was it like going back to Wembley though in 2022? I mean, that for him, it was an amazing moment. So it must have been awesome. Yeah.
Well, my fallback, I couldn't hear a note I was playing. No, in fact, the problem was I couldn't hear a note anyone else was playing because I didn't have an amp and I just had like an effects unit in my headphones. All I could hear was me So I had to take one headphone out so I could hear the drums and the rhythm. And that was a bit chaotic. It was nice to be there.
All right, there's two other people that were here in 1981. Rrussell Bell, Chris Payne.
Well, it's such an amazing moment, and obviously we talked about the Dramatis. Obviously, you came back in 2020 with the Torment of Angels, and then before that was the Like a Human EP. And I just wondered what was the inspiration behind that? I think he said it was your first solo EP. That one.
Yeah, no, I just had a bunch of songs and I picked a few out, and I thought it'd be silly not to, because Bandcamp was so easy to use. I just thought, I'd stick it on Bandcamp. It was just something to do, really. And I'm quite pleased with the EP. Torment of Angels, that was when I was talking to Chris about getting back together again. So I thought, I better write a single for that. So I just put that out as well as Dramatis. And they've got some good songs now, though. I've at least enough for, I've only got 15, 20.
And is there like a particular time frame of when you'd like to, or what you'd like to do with that?
Yeah, ideally I'd like to have them ready by 2 years ago.
Yeah,
that's sadly not practical.
Yeah,
it's just that finishing them. I'm a night finishing things, and I need to get into a studio for a period of time with an engineer, so I finally polish them off and get them out.
Awesome. I look forward to hearing that. Well, outside your work with Numan and Dramatis, you've obviously you mentioned it briefly, but you've had a prolific career with TV and film and elsewhere. So I just, for those who might not know, like, would it be possible to give like a little potted history of your career?
Yeah. Well, after Gary, I started a jingle company called One Hand Clapping. And the first ad I did was for Toyota Celica in the 80s, I think. I got the New York Advertising Award for Best Use of Original Music for it. And that got loads of other work. Things like Sure deodorant, Clark shoes, and all the glamorous things. Of course, I did hundreds of them. And then I was musical director at BSB for a while, working on the Keith Allen project. And I wrote stand-up comedy for him and scripts, sketches. And then I was on Kiss FM morning show with Greg Charles for 6 months, co-hosting that. And I wrote a couple of books with him. It was non-stop. I've still always got more to do than I've done, which is
I love the Craig Charles connection as well. I think obviously my favourite artist is Gary, and my favourite TV show ever was Red Dwarf. So I just love that there's
you can't lose.
Yeah. Exactly. So he's a big Gary fan as well, isn't he? He's
Oh, absolutely.
He's appeared on the show a few times.
Mm.
So we've got just a couple of questions from listeners as well. So firstly, from Adrian Tudor, did you ever get frustrated not playing guitar on songs that were basically written for keyboards?
Yes and no. Yeah, because I love playing guitar, obviously, but I was more chuffed that I could play the instruments that were needed. And that was quite handy. I kind of like playing violin and on stage, and the keyboards were fairly easy. So that was good. But yeah, sometimes like I wasn't playing anything at all. And I got sequestered into percussion a few times. And I kind of liked playing the signers when I first got them. I hated them with a vengeance. And I used to hit them. So I thought if I hit them hard enough, I'll break them. So I won't have to play them anymore. But then I just worked out a way to enjoy it and just smash the shit out of them. And I had a guiro in one song, which was different. But no, I didn't mind. I knew there was going to be a lot of tracks without guitar. So no, it didn't bother me.
And then from Ariel Melton, she asked, I read you had a combined degree in physics and psychology. You could have chosen many careers. So how did you get to choose music? Obviously, you mentioned that briefly earlier.
Yeah. Well, the guys that taught me physics, I was never going to be as good as them. I didn't really want to be them. But music is such fun. It's the best job in the world. If you can make a living at recording and touring, I highly recommend it.
Absolutely.
So.
And then Beef Drinkler asks, during your tenure, what was your favourite tour and least favourite tour, and why?
Oh, that's a hard one. I liked the Warriors tour because I thought the image was great, and there was quite good stuff in it. The first tour was I always feel that was the best because we didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And the Wembley gigs were amazing, apart from the sadness involved with the ending. And there was never a worse tour. I can't think of any tour I didn't thoroughly enjoy. So that phrase doesn't exist.
That's good. Well, for me, I was going to ask, like, was there particular songs that you just enjoyed playing the most? Was there ones that you were like, this is
I Die, You Die.
Yeah.
She's no, what is it? We Are Glass. Me, I Disconnect From You. All the old
rocky one.
Of course, as a guitarist.
Yeah,
I like those.
Awesome. Well, that is all my questions, though, Russell. Thanks so much for your time today. It's been amazing. I could talk to you for hours, but it's so good to hear from you. And just so finally, then, what are you up to now, and what can we look forward to next, aside from Dramatis as well?
Well, I'm concentrating completely on the Dramatis album at the moment, so that will be the next thing that comes out.
Brilliant.
And hopefully, I'm looking at record deals. Because I probably won't do it on Bandcamp. I'm going to talk to Cherry Red, see if they're interested, and any other companies out there I'll consider. But hopefully in the next year it should be out.
Perfect. Well, I know that everyone is going to be very excited to hear that when it does. So
I hope they like it.
I'm sure they will. Well, thanks so much for your time, Russell.
My pleasure.
Pleased to talk to you, and thanks for appearing on Electric Friends.
Okay. Cheers, mate.
Cheers. Rrussell Bell there. Thanks so much to Russell for appearing on the podcast. I look forward to whatever he does next, whether it's solo, Dramatis, or otherwise. So thanks for listening to Electric Friends as ever. If there's anyone in particular you'd love to appear on the show, perhaps you even have an in to help me get in contact with them, or to just say hello or share with me your Numan fan stories for me to share in future episodes, please get in touch. I'm on numanpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can find me on socials at Numan Podcast on Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok. Plus you can listen to past episodes and watch the video versions of my interviews on YouTube. And please give the podcast a rating and a review when you can. It makes a huge difference. And of course, share with your fellow Numanoids. For now, have a good one, and I'll speak to you soon.
Friends, a Gary Newman podcast, celebrating the tracks by a musical pioneer.